We have them both, see, and that's better than having one, no matter what anybody says. Well, if there were a reason, we would. And when we say there isn't any reason, that just simply means that they're both very, very competitive about the position. There is not a separation between the two. They're both performing at the same level coming out of spring practice. It was they went in spring practice as both of them being ones, and they came out exactly the same way. It's going to be a process about being able to define who the number one is, but I think both of them have had good summers. Both of them have, very equivalent capabilities in our program. Well, I think every year it is competitive. I've said this often. I believe the Big 12 Conference is top to bottom, as good a conference as there is in the country. And when I say top to bottom, that just means that you can you'd better come to play every single week. So anybody can beat anybody in our conference. Everybody has the capabilities of being able to do that. Well, if indeed that is a characteristic, it would have come from my mother, and I mean that sincerely. My mother was I was an only child. My mother was. Obviously, single parent. She worked long and hard hours. She worked 12 hours a day, 12 hours a day, six days a week. She never had the money to have an automobile, so she never bothered to get a driver's license. So we had to live in downtown St. Joseph, Missouri, in a one-room apartment, not one bedroom, but one room. My mother was 4 foot 9 inches tall. She weighed never over 100 pounds, and yet she was the toughest person I've ever known in my life. When she said no, that's exactly what it meant. And there were a lot of times when I thought, maybe I want to go out and do this and want to go out and do that, and that's not what happened. She stood in front of that door and said no. That's exactly what it meant, and I abided by it. So if I have a certain degree of that, it certainly came from her. Well, to me, it may be a little different than some, but you've always heard the adage that football emulates life, or it's like life, or you learn life's lessons, in the game of football, and I believe in that, and I believe that that's accurate, that it's true, that one's intrinsic value system can be shaped by their experiences in the game of football, and it has been, it's just been a delight for me to be able to try diligently to impart a value system, an appropriate value system within each player that we have in our program now and in the past. And as long as I feel the capacity to do that, then I want to do it. And like I said, that's the most significant thing as it relates to our football program or coaching. To me, it always has been that way. I say not always, but for the largest portion of my career, anyway. Well, I don't think my emotions about the game and about coaching have changed considerably. And I don't look at it as having fun or not having fun. I don't think that's really necessarily entered into it. Some things may be a little bit more enjoyable than others, but that's not one of the emotions that I would say defines me as a coach, or defines how I feel about coaching, or have anything to do with the length of my career. Well, first and foremost, Dalton will be an All-American if Dalton plays well enough to become an All-American. I mean, that's one of those things I just mentioned. It's people get in trouble taking things for granted, and we've experienced that. We experienced it last year. We took our capabilities for granted and lost a whole bunch of ball games at the very outset of the season before we really gained some understanding about who we were, where we were, and what we were all about, and what it took to be successful and finish the season quite well. And I think Dalton certainly has the capabilities, and would certainly love to see it happen. But once again, and I don't think Dalton is a guy that would take his own performance for granted, and I don't think he will. But then again, I have to try to hold him accountable so that I don't take it for granted either. Now we got on that, and I forgot what the original question was.
Just about his leadership.
Oh, okay. Well, it is extremely important for our program to have leadership, period. Whether it comes from Dalton or it comes from Alex or it comes from Skyler or whoever it comes from, it is really vital in your program to have quality, caring, demanding leadership at the player level. You're always going to get it from, coaches. That's kind of what they do. But we all know, that how players interact with each other really becomes so vital, and the guidance and direction that players can give each other is so important. And Dalton, what I appreciate, he's always had, the capacity to set the example. And setting the example is important, but that doesn't always equate to quality leadership. And to be able to kind of step out of your comfort zone and be able to provide some demanding leadership, and sometimes have to confront, your teammates, your friends, in a way that is uncomfortable, is important in your program, and that's that demanding leadership. And he is developing, the capabilities and the capacity to do exactly that, which will certainly benefit him, and most certainly and most importantly will benefit our football program. Well, it's my perception that it will not affect anything that we have done in the past, and that probably takes some verification or explanation. I think all of us realize the value of having depth in your program. If you've got just like we talked about quarterback, if we have two. To me, that's far better than one. If one goes, kind of like I said a while ago, we had two quarterbacks go down last year, so we were playing our number 3 quarterback. Well, the same thing can happen at every position on the field. Now, you'd like to have, when somebody is injured, you'd like to have the guy that steps in have as much experience as possible. Well, if you're playing freshman instead of that number 2 guy, then you're taking away experience that will be beneficial and have an impact on the outcome of ball games for you. When the opportunity comes for somebody to get on the field that's not a starter, for us it's going to be number 2, number 3, etc. And at the end of the season, then, if we have a game or two that we have the opportunity to play, some redshirt freshmen, then we'd certainly pursue that.